Hello and welcome to part 36 of the series on how to create a chess game with ReactJS. In this part we are going to implement the draw ending when there are insufficient pieces in the game. What does insufficient material mean? Well, here on chess.com we see that when the game has insufficient material, that means that the game is a draw. And when is there insufficient material? We have a couple of scenarios. First scenario says when there are two lone kings, it is a draw because there is no way to checkmate with just two kings. The game is declared a draw. If we scroll further down, we see also some piece-specific combinations. If both sides have any of the following and there are no pawns on the board, the game will end in a draw. So if both sides have a lone king, which we just saw, which is right here, it will be a draw. If both sides have a king and a bishop, it will also be a draw. And also if both sides have only a king and a knight, then it will also be a draw. As you can see right here, when the king has only a bishop and the other king only has a knight, then it will also be a draw. At the bottom we see one more variation, and that one is if one player has a king and two knights and the other player only has a king, then it is also a draw because of insufficient materials. Currently, when that happens in our game will go on indefinitely. So if we go in our source and then open the constants, and then if we select all the pieces from our positions, like here, and then delete them. And if we then select all the pieces from the opponent, except for the king, let's add the king in, like so. And then if we save it up, we have a lot less pieces, but we want even less pieces. So we are going to remove all the other pieces from the opponent and also our own pieces. So we only are left with the king and the queen. And instead of having a queen, we want to have one bishop, and they also get a bishop. And in this case, we should have a draw because this is one of the scenarios that we saw. This is the scenario where a king and a bishop and a king and a bishop for both sides, which means that it is not possible to force a checkmate. However, as you can see, we can just indefinitely play this without forcing any endgame, which means that this game will never end. Well, in order to fix that, what we want to do is we want to implement the logic that we see on this page, those 3 or 4 or 5 scenarios, into our game. In order to do that, we want to add one more thing to the game, because if we test it with this layout, it will always be a draw. So why not test it with one more piece? And we are going to copy over our king, and we are going to make this a pawn, and this pawn will sit in front of the king, like so. And now it shouldn't be a draw. However, if we move this pawn up, move the bishop to here, move the king to here, and then take the pawn, then it should be a draw. However, we don't get the message that there is a draw, so that's what we are going to add. On the left side right here, in the models, we have our board.ts. And inside of this board, we have a lot of logic. So if we scroll up to here, we have a list of pieces, the total turns, the winning team, stalemate, moves. We are going to add a new variable next to stalemate. We are going to copy it over by pressing Shift Alt arrow down, and we are going to name this draw. We're going to save it up, and we also need to give it a default value. So right here in our constructor, we say this.draw is false, and then save it up. If we refresh the page, we see nothing is happening. And let's also log this variable. And we are going to do that from our referee. So in our components right here, we're going to open up the referee component. And if we scroll up right here, we play a move. So that should be right in this method right here. And then at the end of this play move method, we check if it is a stalemate, a winning team, and otherwise we return the clone board. However, instead of only doing this, we also want to say if clone board dot draw, then let's just for now console.log it is a draw exclamation mark. And we also want to indent this a little bit to the left. And then what we also want to do is we want to make this an else if. So now if it is a draw, it will not be a stalemate and we will not have a winning team, and it will go into this if statement and the game will continue for now. However, that's fine. If you now refresh the page and open up our console, right here, we get a warning, that's fine. If we move our pawn here, move the bishop to here, move us to here, and then attack the pawn like so, we don't see a message. We expected to see a message right there, because this is a state where it should be a draw. I also see that we have a warning and another warning. We're also going to fix that at the end of this video, after we have fixed the draw problem. For the draw, we are going to look into the board right here, and we assign it a default value of false. Alright, so if we assign false there, we also need to assign it true somewhere else. Let's see, right here, we check if it is a stalemate based on the amount of moves that one enemy has or one player has. What if we also try and determine if there is a draw in the calculate all moves? Instead of adding it to the calculate all moves, we are going to move down to the play move method, and at the bottom of the play move method right here, we see that we already have some code. Let's collapse the sidebar so we see a bit more code. And then if we zoom in on here, we see that we have the logic for managing the history of the moves, which we use to display the move history on the right side. We calculate all the moves and then we return true. Great. So instead of only doing this, we also want to check for draw. Because in this method, the play move method, at the end, all the pieces that have been captured should be updated. So we should have an updated board state. So right here, we want to check for draw. And what do we need to check for? If we go back to our website right here, from chess.com, we see that it is a draw if there are two lone kings. If there is a lone king and the other opponent has a king and a bishop. If there is a lone king and the other opponent has a king and a knight. If it is a king and a bishop against a king and a bishop. If it is a king and a bishop against a king and a knight, etc. So we have a couple of scenarios. And then down here, it's also if one person has two knights and if one person only has a lone king, then it will also be a stalemate. Then it will also be a draw. So right here, we're going to write it out. Two lone kings is draw. We also have one lone king and one king with two knights is draw. Then down there, we also had the scenario where we have one king plus bishop or knight versus one king plus bishop or knight. This will also result in a draw. All right, so we have three scenarios to fix. The first one is two lone kings. That should be easy, right? So let's try and create this logic. So right here, we're going to say if pieces dot filter, and then we want to only look for the pieces that are in our team. So let's say p.team is equal to team type that our. If it is equal to, and we want to find the length of this array, so we should have the length of the pieces that we have. If it is equal to 1, then we know that our team only has one piece. And if it only has one piece, what piece could it be? It's the king, since only the king is the piece that can be left at the end. It's not possible to have a pawn and not a king, or a queen and not a king. It's always the king in the end. So if you only have one piece, we know for sure it's the king. And we also want to check the opponent. So we say this dot pieces dot filter, and then p dot team is equal to opponent, team type dot opponent, and then we want to also take the length. It's equal to 1. Now we know that we only have two kings. So right here, we're going to say two lone kings, and we say this dot draw is equal to true. All right, so that's one scenario. Let's try and see if this works. So if we zoom out and go to the right side, right here, we see that we don't see anything in the console. And what if we move our pawn up to here, this bishop to here, this bishop to here, then we need to move out of check, that's fine. We move this bishop to here, then we take the pawn, we take this space right here, then we take this bishop. And now if we take this bishop with our king, we should be able to see something in the console. So at the bottom, something should appear. So let's take the bishop, and at the bottom we see it's a draw. And that is because we now have only two kings left. Great. So basically we already got the first rule, which is amazing. The next thing that we want to do is we want to check if there are one king, or if there is one king with 2 knights and the other team only has 1 king. So in here we are going to say else if this.pieces.filter p p.team is equal to team type.hour, and then we want to say, okay, we want to have 3 pieces and we want to check if 2 of those pieces are knights. So you say this.pieces.filter and then not filter p.teamType is equal to teamType.hour. Then we also want to say p.is knight, not king, is knight, and then the length is equal to 2. Now we know that let's see, if we have 3 pieces on our team left and 2 of those pieces are knights, then we know that we have one part of the scenario and the other part should be, and this.pieces.filter, and then we want to filter for the opponent pieces. So p.team is equal to teamType.opponent, and then .length is equal to 1. What we then want to do is we want to say this.draw is equal to true. All right, and we made a syntax error here somewhere, and let's see, we forgot to add an and operator right here. If we save this up, this should be the scenario where we have 1 king plus 2 knights versus 1 king. And this is basically the same as the opponent scenario. So we are going to copy over this code right here, and we're going to paste it right here. We're going to outline this with this right here. It's not necessary, however, it makes the code a bit more readable. And then we are going to outline this as well. And the difference is we now don't want to check for our team, but we want to check for the opponent team. So we say opponent, and here we say our. So now we have the other solution. This is 1 king plus 2 knights from us, our, versus 1 king from the opponent. And this is 1 king plus 2 knights opponent versus 1 king from us. All right, let's spawn in some knights. So right here, instead of spawning in a pawn, let's spawn in a knight, and let's spawn in another knight. So right here, we're going to say knight, and then we say 5. Let's refresh the page, and now we see that we have 2 knights. And right now, if we would move this bishop to here and self-destruct it with the king, and then move this king to here, move it up, and then move this bishop to here and take this bishop, we see that it is a draw, even though we have 2 knights. So this is the rule that we have just implemented. And the same is for the opponent side. If the opponent had 2 horses or 2 knights, and those knights would be taken, well, we can simulate it pretty easily by just saying opponent, and then those knights will be the opponent's knights. If we then, let's see, take one of them out, so I'm going to move the king to here, take that, then move the king to here, then move it to here, and take the bishop, and then we see it is a draw, because now the opponent has 2 knights and we only have 1 king. However, it's not possible to force a checkmate in this position, so it is a draw. So the final one is that we have 1 knight for us and 1 knight for the opponent. This scenario right here, kinda, is also a scenario where we could get a draw. So in our board, we want to add a new else if, and then we want to check else if this.pieces.filter, and then we want to filter for the p with, which is in our team, p.team is equal to teamType.hour, and then we want to look for all the pieces, or well, we want to look if we have 2 pieces in our possession. So if one of those pieces, it should be the king, and then we want to check and this.pieces.filter p, and then p.is bishop or p.is knight, dot length is also equal to 1, then we know that there is one king in our team, and we also know that the other piece is or a bishop or a knight, and we also want to check if that team type from the piece is team type dot our, like so. All right, and then we also want to add some extra parentheses right here, because we want to make sure that it is and our team, and then either of those two. If we don't add the parentheses right here, it will be if it is our team and bishop or knight, which means that it will also probably be true if it has only a knight or a bishop, but it doesn't look at the our statement right here. If this is true, we know that we have a king and a bishop, and then we also want to check and this dot pieces dot filter p dot team type is equal to team type dot opponent dot length is equal to 1. So if the opponent only has a king, then we get here, or if the opponent only also has a bishop or a king. So I want to write an or. This dot pieces dot filter p, and then we want to look for the opponent's pieces again, is equal to team type dot opponent, and then we want to add the parentheses right here again. P dot is bishop or P dot is knight, like so. And here we have something special, because we also have, okay, we definitely need to have two pieces, and then we definitely have to have a bishop or a knight in those two pieces. But then the opponent doesn't necessarily have to have one piece. It can also be that the opponent has a piece which is a bishop or a knight. So right here we want to add parentheses as well. So we're going to add it to here. And then we say, okay, if it is only the king or the opponent has two pieces, so we are going to copy over this if statement right here, is equal to 2. And then we also want to add an extra parenthesis to here. And then at the end also add an extra parenthesis. And we say and n. All right, so at the end, we want to add the curly braces. Right here we get the scenarios where we have one king plus bishop or knight from us, and then one king from opponent, or one king plus knight or bishop from opponent. Those are the cases that we are catching right now. And then right here we want to say this dot draw is equal to true. Let's save it up. And we can also remove the comment at the bottom right here. Now if we save this up and refresh the page, if we take the horse from here, so let's move it on a black square where it is already, okay, so that's fine. So if we then take it like so, and then move the king away, and then what if we take this horse as well? So we move this one to here, then move it back to here, and then take it. We see that it is a draw because we have both bishops. All right, so what if we only have horses? So we take this bishop right here. How do we take it? Let's see, we take it by moving the bishop to here, then the horse to here, then this horse to here, take the bishop, and then we need to take the opponent's bishop. And we cannot do that because we are in check. And if you move this to here, then we want to move it like this, we also get it is a draw. Great. So we see if we get two bishops or two knights, then we get two draws. However, there is one scenario where we don't get a draw, which is if we only have a king and then the opponent has a king with a bishop or a king with a horse. So let's move our bishop right here. Then we move the bishop to there, take the bishop, then we move away, take the bishop, and we see that we don't get an error, or we don't get a draw. And now if we take the horse, we don't get a draw either, because we are not checking if there is only one white king and there is a black king with a bishop. If it is the other way around, so let's say we take this one right here, then we move to here, then we take this one, it's a draw already. And if we take this bishop, we see that we still get a draw because we know that the king with the bishop is not able to checkmate. We also need to apply this for the opponent king or the opponent team. In order to do that, we are going to rewrite this a little bit. We are going to create a new variable in the check for draw. And we're going to say const our team eligible for draw. And this constant will be equal to if our team is in a position that is eligible for draw. So if you look at the chess.com site right here, it should be when it is a lone king, it is a king and a bishop, or it is a king and a knight. So on the left right here, this our team eligible for draw should be equal to this dot pieces dot filter. And then we want to filter out the pieces from our team, like so. And then dot length is equal to 1. So that means we only have one king. Or if, and then we are going to write this dot pieces dot filter p dot team is equal to team type dot our and then we are going to add parentheses right here, p dot is knight or p dot is bishop, like so. And then we want to say dot length is equal to 2. And we also want to add in here p dot is king or p dot is knight or p dot is bishop. We're going to wrap this in some new lines. So right here, this will be its own line. And then at the bottom right here, where we type in the and sign, we're also going to put this in a new line so that it is a little bit more readable. And then we can add a semicolon right here. So this variable should hold true if our team has only king or has king plus knight or bishop. All right, so then we know if it is true, our team has one of either 3 scenarios. What if we do the same thing for the opponent team? So right here, we are going to create a new const like this. We copied over our old const, and then we want to indent this to the left, and we want to say opponent team eligible for draw. This will be opponent, like so. And then we have the same logic as we had up here, but then for the opponent. We are going to update this with if opponent team has only one king or has king plus knight or bishop. Then down here, all we need to do, we can remove this last statement. And then we can also remove this statement right here. Because right now we only have the 2 statements. If the king has 2 knights and the other opponent or our team has only a king, we are going to add an if, and this if will say if our team eligible for draw and opponent team eligible for draw, then this dot draw is equal to true. And then here we are going to add the else if, which we have on the next line. So this statement right here covers all the possible solutions if there is only king, or there's a king with a knight, or there is a king with a knight and a bishop, vice versa for the opponent team. And these 2 right here cover the statements if there is a king and 2 knights. So let's save this up. And now if we refresh the page, and let's see if we make sure that the black team only has a bishop and white doesn't have anything else, we can do that by putting this piece right here, move that down, go to here, move it to the left, take this one. It is a draw. We already see it because either team only has a king and a minor piece, and in this case a knight or a bishop. However, if we move it a little bit further and we take this knight, we still have a draw, which is correct. Great, so what if the roles are reversed? What if they do have a knight, but we don't have a bishop anymore? So we're going to move it to here, and then take the bishop, and then we want to also take the enemy bishop. So we are going to move it to here, and then move this away. It is also a draw, because we only have 2 knights. Great, so we have some code right here. It's this piece right here, where we check for draw. Instead of putting it inside of the play move method, instead what we are going to do is we're going to add a new function right here, or a new method, which is check for draw. And this method will be returning nothing, so it will be a void. And inside of here, we're going to paste the code that we have just copied. And then what we can do is we can just say right here, this.check for draw. And now all the code that is used for checking if it is a draw is in a separate method. So if implemented correctly, we should be able to see that the things that we had still are in the console. So as you can see in the console, we still see it is a draw. Great. So the last thing we need to do is we are going to add this, and we are going to say set model message and endgame model ref. And in the set model message, we're going to say it's a draw. And then right here, we want to remove the hidden. And now if we refresh the page and try and reproduce this once more, take this one, then take this one, we get it's a draw, and we can play again. And now the draw should be going right. So if we play this, and let's see if we do something like this, we can take it. Then we can move our rook to here, not the rook. Oh, that's very, no, it's the knight. Yes. So if we move the knight to here and then take this one, you see that we don't get the message that it is a draw, and that's because there are still moves left. So it is actually possible to force a checkmate in. So it is actually possible to do a checkmate in this position with the board. All right. The final thing that we are going to do is we are going to remove the messages that we get down here. So we get a linter error in the constants.ts. And that is because we have modified our board a little bit. So let's just revert that, save it up. And now we should have a working board again. That's great. And the second thing is that right here we see each child in a list should have a unique key prop. And that is inside of the referee.tsx line 166. So if we go to line 166, and we can do that by pressing Ctrl G and then type in the number of the line. So if I say 10, I will go to line 10. But in this case, I want to go to line 166. And then if we go to the right, we see that we are in this line. That is not the correct line, I think. I suppose they mean that the moves that we display right here should have a unique key prop, because that's the moves on the right side and they are being mapped. And when something is mapped through JavaScript or through React, that usually means that they need a unique identifier so they know which element on the DOM is corresponding to the variable inside of React. Well, since we don't have a key, we get the message. One simple thing to fix that can be to add the index right here. So now we have the m, which is equal to the move, and then the I, which is equal to the number, and that's the index of the current move. And right here we can say key is equal to I. If we now save it up, the error should be gone. So as you can see, we don't get an error anymore. And the way that this works is because we loop through the move array, and then for every move, we increment I plus 1. So this is the index of the move. However, if, for example, your move array is every time that every render, it is in a random order, then this won't work, because then the element that is in the UI is corresponding to a different variable at the end or at your React page. However, since we are not changing the move around, we should be safe to do this. All right, so if we make this a bit bigger, then zoom in a little bit more. What we can do right now is, let's give a demo. So I'm going to prepare the board. All right, so what happens if we take the bishop right here? If we take it, we see that it is a draw, because both kings only have a king and a knight, and that is not possible to make a checkmate. All right, with this, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you could follow along. Leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!